Motivation versus discipline. There's a spark that starts most journeys, that flash of inspiration, that rush of excitement, that moment when you feel unstoppable. You tell yourself, this is it. I'm ready. And for a while, the momentum carries you. The mornings feel lighter, the vision feels clear, and your purpose burns bright. But then it fades, not all at once, gradually, quietly. One morning you wake up and the spark feels dim. The same practice that once felt like purpose now feels like work. And here's the truth that separates the masters from the masses. They keep going anyway, because motivation is a visitor, discipline is a companion. Motivation knocks on your door when the weather is pleasant, when conditions are perfect, when your spirit is high. Discipline stays when the sky darkens and the wind turns cold. Motivation is intoxicating. That's why we chase it. It feels like energy itself, like a gust of wind that lifts you higher than your own effort could. But like wind, it's inconsistent. It changes direction without warning. Motivation feeds on novelty. It's alive in the thrill of beginnings, in the promise of transformation, in the vision of what could be. But the moment life becomes ordinary again, motivation leaves the room. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to start something when it's new? A diet, a practice, a project, but how quickly that energy fades once the shine wears off. That's because motivation thrives on feeling good. Discipline, however, thrives on doing good, even when it doesn't feel good. There's a Taoist story about two monks who debated the difference between passion and practice. The first monk said, "Passion is everything. Without it, there is no fire." The second monk smiled and pointed to the candle burning before them. He said, "Passion lit the candle, but discipline keeps the flame alive." The first monk frowned. "What happens when the candle burns low?" The second replied, "That's when you learn whether it was real fire or just smoke." That's the essence of discipline, the steady, silent heat that endures long after excitement fades. It doesn't depend on external fuel, it's self-sustaining. It burns from within. Motivation will flirt with you, lift you, abandon you, and return at its own convenience. Discipline, on the other hand, is a loyal companion. It's not glamorous. It doesn't bring flowers or fanfare, but it's always there when you need it most. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It asks what's required. It doesn't care about mood or momentum. It cares about integrity. And that's why those who rely on motivation burn out, while those who cultivate discipline burn steady. Because the discipline don't need perfect conditions to act, their consistency creates the conditions. The musician and the empty hall. There's a story of a violinist who performed for sold-out crowds early in her career. But as years passed, her fame faded. The applause grew quieter. One night she performed in a small town where only 7 people showed up. After the show, a young student asked her, "How do you find the motivation to play with such passion when so few come to listen?" She smiled and said, "I don't play for applause. I play because this is who I am." Then she added, "If I only gave my best when people were watching, I'd never have become someone worth watching." That's the shift, from doing something for a result to doing it from a principle. When you build your life on discipline, every act becomes a reflection of who you choose to be, not what you hope to get. Think of the unseen gardens, the quiet work beneath the soil. Roots don't grow for recognition, they grow for stability. And when the storms come, it's not the branches that save the tree, it's the roots. Discipline is your root system. It's invisible, often unappreciated, but it's what keeps you grounded when everything above ground is uncertain. Motivation gets you to plant the seed. Discipline ensures it flowers. There's an illusion that progress happens in dramatic moments, the big wins, the breakthroughs, the achievements that make headlines. But the truth is, progress is built quietly, invisibly, in the repetition of ordinary days. It's not the single speech that changes your life. It's the hundreds of hours you spend preparing when no one is listening. It's not the one victorious match that makes a champion. It's the lonely mornings, the aching muscles, the early alarms. Discipline is the bridge between intention and identity. Each time you show up when it's hardest, you add one more brick to that bridge. There was once a stone cutter who grew tired of his labor. Each day he struck the rock with his hammer, but the stone barely chipped. He envied the wealthy merchant, the governor, even the sun. But one day, while resting beneath a mountain, he heard a crack. A boulder split in half beside him. He asked the old monk sitting nearby, "What caused it to break?" The monk replied, "It wasn't the final strike. It was every strike that came before it." That's discipline, the faith to keep striking even when nothing seems to change. You don't know which strike will open the stone, but you trust that every swing matters. Motivation feeds on excitement. Discipline thrives in silence. Motivation is loud. It shouts in slogans and playlists, in New Year's resolutions and gym memberships. Discipline whispers. It says, "Do it anyway." Motivation thrives on excitement. It's the firework that lights the sky for a moment. Discipline thrives in silence. It's the slow-burning ember that keeps you warm long after the noise has faded. You won't always hear discipline. It doesn't cheer. It doesn't congratulate. But it's there every morning you rise before you want to. It's there every time you finish what you start. It's there in the silence between effort and reward, the sacred space where character is built. One winter morning, a young monk complained to his teacher, "Master, I can't meditate today. The hall is too cold." The teacher said nothing. He walked outside, scooped a handful of snow, and placed it in a bowl before the boy. Then he lit a candle and held it close until the snow began to melt. "See," he said softly, "warmth is created, not found." Motivation waits for the world to warm you. Discipline creates the fire. How masters think about effort. Every great artist, athlete, or spiritual teacher eventually learns the same lesson. The practice doesn't get easier. You get stronger. The violinist still has days she doesn't want to play. The black belt still faces mornings he doesn't want to train. The monk still sits through restless hours of wandering thoughts. What changes is not their feeling. It's their relationship to feeling. Discipline teaches you that resistance is not a stop sign. It's a signal. It says, something meaningful is happening here. That's where growth lives, right at the point of friction. A young athlete once asked his coach, "How do I stay motivated all year?" The coach led him to a mirror and said, "Look at yourself." The athlete waited, confused. The coach said, "You'll see motivation on good days, but you'll see discipline on the days you don't want to look." Discipline, he continued, is the moment you act before your mind negotiates. That's the secret of every high performer. They don't let emotion dictate execution. They let commitment lead and feeling follows. Every dream requires a bridge, and that bridge is built from discipline. Desire alone can't carry you across. It will give you the vision, but not the structure. Discipline is the architecture of transformation. It turns inspiration into evidence. Without discipline, dreams remain fantasies. With discipline, even ordinary efforts accumulate into miracles. Because the truth is, greatness is never achieved through intensity, it's achieved through consistency, not in the moments of fire, but in the moments of friction. The farmer's rhythm. There's a rhythm to life that discipline understands and motivation forgets. The farmer doesn't wait for a perfect season. He plants, waters, weeds, and waits. He trusts the process because he's lived it. Some seasons bring abundance, others bring drought, but he shows up for both because he knows the rhythm, and the rhythm rewards faithfulness. Discipline teaches you that you can't control outcomes, but you can control input. You can't force results, but you can honor the ritual. And when the harvest comes, you realize it wasn't luck, it was loyalty, the sacredness of showing up. Every time you show up when you least want to, you deepen your relationship with yourself. You prove that your word means something. You send a message to your spirit, "I can count on me." That self-trust is the quiet engine of power. It doesn't need noise. It doesn't need external validation. It moves beneath the surface, steady and sure. Real progress doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself. And it's built in those silent moments when no one's watching and you choose to keep going anyway. Motivation is the fire that gets you started, but it burns out. Discipline is the furnace that sustains you. It never stops. If you rely on motivation, you'll move only when life feels good. If you live by discipline, you'll move because it's who you are. Motivation feeds on excitement. Discipline thrives in silence. And it's in that silence, that sacred space of effort without applause, where mastery is born. In the next section, we'll explore how that same silence becomes a gateway to strength, how discipline through difficulty transforms pain into progress and resistance into power. But for now, remember this simple truth: motivation visits, discipline lives with you, and the one who learns to walk with discipline never walks alone. Comfort is the silent killer. There's a kind of death that doesn't look like dying. It's slow, painless, quiet. It comes wrapped in soft sheets and warm routines. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It tells you you've earned a break. It says you're safe here. It hums. Why struggle when you can rest? That's the voice of comfort, the most beautiful poison you'll ever taste. It enters your life disguised as peace. But over time, it dulls your edge, drains your spirit, and lulls your dreams into silence. Comfort doesn't kill your body, it kills your becoming. The nature of comfort. Comfort feels harmless at first. You work hard, you deserve rest, that's how it starts. But comfort has a secret appetite. It always wants more. The more you feed it, the hungrier it becomes. Before long, what was once recovery becomes retreat. What was once rest becomes resignation. You stop testing your limits. You stop seeking new edges. You start confusing stable with alive. And here's the tragedy. Comfort rarely announces its takeover. You just wake up one day realizing the fire inside you has dimmed and you can't remember the last time you did something that scared you. There's an old parable about a bird born inside a golden cage. It had everything: food, safety, warmth. It never faced the hunger of the wild or the winds of the storm, but as it grew, its wings began to ache, not from use, but from the lack of it. The bird would perch at the edge of its open door, feeling the cool air beyond. It wanted to fly, but fear whispered, "Why risk the unknown when everything you need is here?" So it stayed. Years passed. The bird forgot it could fly. And one day, when the cage door rusted shut, it didn't notice. That's what comfort does. It convinces you that safety is freedom. But safety without growth is captivity with cushions. Comfort doesn't lock you in. It simply makes you stop trying the door. The subtle erosion of ambition. No one wakes up and decides, "I'm done growing." It happens in small, invisible ways, one easy choice at a time. You hit the snooze button. You skip the workout. You delay the project. You put off the hard conversation. You tell yourself it's just this once, but just this once becomes your new pattern. And slowly, imperceptibly, your standard shifts. Comfort seduces you with small compromises. It tells you that ease is peace, that difficulty is danger, that slowing down is self-care, even when it's self-sabotage. The danger isn't that you'll fail, it's that you'll stop caring enough to try. The warrior who forgot his edge. There was once a warrior known for his precision and speed. He had fought many battles, protected many people, and won great honor. But in time, he grew tired. He said, "I have earned my rest." So he built a home in the mountains, far from conflict. At first, it was paradise: quiet mornings, simple meals, peace. But after a while, something began to change. He started waking later, training less. His sword, once an extension of his spirit, began to feel heavy in his hand. His body softened, his instincts dulled. Then one day, thieves came to his valley. He tried to rise and defend his home, but his reflexes betrayed him. He had forgotten how to move like a warrior. He realized too late that peace without purpose had turned his strength into softness. His comfort had become his defeat, the poison that feels like peace. Comfort feels good. That's what makes it dangerous. Pain warns you when something's wrong. Fear alerts you when something's new. But comfort whispers, "Everything's fine." It numbs the discomfort that leads to growth. It silences the hunger that drives creation. It replaces passion with apathy, purpose with pleasure. That's why comfort is the most beautiful poison, because it kills you gently, without protest. You don't feel it at first. It just feels like peace. But real peace doesn't dull your senses. It awakens them. It doesn't make you smaller, it expands you. You've heard the story. Drop a frog into boiling water, it jumps out. But place it in cool water and heat it slowly. It never notices the danger until it's too late. Comfort works the same way. It doesn't burn, it simmers. It warms you until you forget the fire of your own potential. It numbs you just enough to make mediocrity feel acceptable. By the time you realize you've stopped growing, the habit has already hardened into identity, the law of decline. Nothing in nature stays still. Everything is either growing or decaying, and yet humans are the only creatures who believe they can pause evolution without consequence. Comfort is stagnation disguised as satisfaction, and stagnation leads to decay, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. Your body loses its strength, your mind loses its edge, your soul loses its hunger. That's not peace, that's slow death. The universe rewards movement. It punishes idleness with quiet erosion.
By the way, what do you think about these concepts so far? If you're ready to master the meditative arts, sign up for the Yielding Warrior membership at the link in the description. I'll teach you how to integrate these concepts into your daily life with guided practices, meditations, and lessons designed to help you master the art of yielding. Back to the video.
There was once a fisherman who spent his life catching fish to feed his family. He rose before dawn, battled storms, mended nets. Then one day he caught so much that he thought, I'll never need to fish again. So he stopped. At first, life was easy, long mornings, good meals. But after a few months, the net began to rot. The salt stiffened its threads. The lines grew brittle. When he finally tried to cast it again, it tore apart in his hands. That's what happens when you stop using your gifts. Unused potential decays. Your strength, your discipline, your creativity, they are like muscles. Neglect them and they weaken. Exercise them and they grow. Comfort is sneaky because it doesn't take everything at once. It takes possibilities one by one. It starts with the dream you postpone, then the standard you lower, then the risk you stop taking, then the part of yourself you stop believing in. Before long, you're living half a life, safe, stable, and unfulfilled. Your days blur together, not because you lack time, but because you lack challenge. You were born for the edges, the places where you stretch, adapt, and awaken. Without that friction, your potential goes unused, your spirit goes untested, and nothing beautiful grows in untested soil. A traveler once entered a village where everyone was asleep. The homes were beautiful, the gardens well kept, but no one was awake. He tried to wake them. He shouted, he rang bells, he lit fires, but no one stirred. Eventually, he found one man sitting under a tree, eyes half open. Why is everyone asleep? The traveler asked. The man said, they were tired of striving. They said the struggle was exhausting, so they chose eternal rest. But this isn't rest, said the traveler. The man smiled sadly. No, he said, but it feels like it. Comfort is that sleep, the kind that looks like rest but robs you of awareness. It keeps you alive, but it keeps you from living. Comfort convinces you that safety is sacred, but the safest path is often the one that leads to regret. You can spend your life avoiding risk, but you'll also avoid growth. You can choose not to fall, but you'll never learn to fly. Every great transformation begins when safety loses its appeal. When you decide that the pain of staying the same finally outweighs the fear of change, that's the tipping point, when the comfort zone becomes unbearable. The way to break free from comfort isn't through guilt or grand declarations. It's through small acts of intentional discomfort. Every time you choose challenge over ease, you reclaim a piece of your strength. Wake earlier than you want to. Train longer than you feel like. Speak truth when silence feels easier. Step into the unknown instead of rehearsing the familiar. These small acts of defiance against comfort reawaken the warrior within you. Each one says, I refuse to be lulled into sleep. A student once asked his master, how do I keep my spirit strong when life becomes too easy? The master led him outside to a circle of glowing embers. Walk through it, he said. The student hesitated. I'll burn myself. The master nodded. Only if you stand still. So the student walked quickly, feeling the heat but not the harm. When he reached the other side, the master said, "Comfort is standing still in the fire. Growth is learning to move through it." That's the art, not avoiding heat, but becoming light enough to walk through it without burning. Every day offers you a choice between expansion and erosion. The decision is rarely dramatic. It's in the micro moments. Will you choose the chair or the challenge, the screen or the silence, the known or the new? Each choice carves your character. And each time you choose discomfort, your spirit sharpens a little more. It's not punishment, and it's purification. Every moment of strain stretches your capacity for life. When you begin to break free from comfort, something awakens inside you, a sense of purpose that was always waiting beneath the surface. Because discomfort doesn't just make you stronger, it makes you clearer. You begin to remember what matters. You remember what it feels like to be alive, alert, present, in motion. That's the heartbeat of transformation. Pressure, presence, purpose. You stop fearing discomfort and start craving growth. That's when you know you've escaped the golden cage. Comfort promises peace, but delivers decay. It gives you warmth, but steals your wings. And while motivation can ignite you and discipline can sustain you, comfort, if left unchecked, can undo them both. Because you can't be both safe and free. You can't stay inside the cage and learn to fly. In the next section, we'll explore what happens when you finally choose discomfort, how pain, challenge, and resistance become sacred tools of transformation, and why the warrior's path leads not away from struggle, but through it. But for now, remember this truth: comfort is the most beautiful poison, and the cure is movement toward the unknown. Pain as a teacher, not an enemy, and failure as feedback. There's a universal truth most people spend their lives avoiding. Pain is not your enemy. Pain is your teacher. It doesn't arrive to punish you, it arrives to prepare you. We live in a culture addicted to comfort and allergic to discomfort. We label anything unpleasant as bad, anything hard as wrong, anything uncertain as failure. But pain isn't a sign you're off course. It's often proof that you're finally walking the right one. Because pain is the price of progress. You can't strengthen what you refuse to stress. You can't refine what you refuse to test. The blacksmith's fire picture a blacksmith at work. The forge blazes hot enough to melt iron. The hammer rings through the air with a rhythm that sounds almost sacred. Each strike shapes the blade, not in one blow, but through repetition, heat, and patience. If the metal could speak, it would probably beg for mercy. But the blacksmith knows the fire doesn't destroy the sword, it creates it. Without the flame, the metal stays brittle. Without the hammer, it never finds its edge. Pain is the forge where strength takes form. Every hardship, every setback, every trial is heat applied to the unrefined parts of you. The fire strips away impurities, your illusions, your laziness, your self-doubt, until only your essence remains. You don't go through pain to be punished. You go through pain to become tempered. The misunderstanding of pain. Somewhere along the way, society began to treat pain like a malfunction, something to eliminate, numb, or medicate. But pain is information. It tells you where attention is required. If you touch a flame, pain says pull back. If you lift a heavy weight, pain says adapt, grow stronger. If you face heartbreak or failure, pain says something inside needs to evolve. Ignore it, and you repeat the same patterns. Listen to it, and it becomes your compass. There's no growth without resistance, and resistance always brings discomfort. You can either suffer from it or learn from it.
Before we continue, I'd love to hear what you think about this concept so far. Don't forget to drop a comment below or let me know if there's a specific meditative topic or principle you'd like me to cover in a future video.
The two runners. Imagine two runners training for a marathon. The first avoids every hill, every cold morning, every day when her body aches. She says, "I'll train when I feel good." The second runs through the rain, through the wind, through the mornings when her legs feel like lead. She doesn't enjoy the pain, but she respects it. Come race day, who is ready? Not the one who avoided the hills, but the one who befriended them. Discomfort reveals resistance, and resistance is the raw material of growth. Every moment of pain is an invitation. Do you want to stay soft or do you want to become strong? Pain as the proof of effort. If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. That's not motivational fluff. That's biology, physics, and spirit combined. Your muscles grow by micro tears that repair stronger. Your mind expands by confronting contradictions. Your heart deepens by breaking open and learning to love again. In every domain of life, pain is the currency of progress. The question isn't how to avoid it. The question is how to use it. There's a story of a young warrior who complained to his master after a brutal training session. "Why must it hurt so much?" he asked. The master smiled and said, "Because you're meeting the parts of yourself that still resist becoming who you're meant to be." He pointed to a piece of iron resting in the forge. "See that blade? It screams when it meets the hammer, but when it cools, it holds an edge no hammer can break." The master leaned closer and whispered, "The heat you feel is not your destruction, it's your transformation." Pain is the conversation between your potential and your limitations, and every time you stay present through that dialogue, your potential wins a little more ground. The power of endurance. The ancient Stoics understood this truth. Epictetus wrote, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." He wasn't glorifying suffering. He was pointing to endurance as the doorway to freedom. Pain exposes your attachments to comfort, to image, to control. When you can sit with discomfort without retreating, you begin to realize something extraordinary. The pain is finite, but the strength it gives you is infinite. You become the kind of person who doesn't crumble when the world gets heavy. You stop asking for the load to be lighter, and you start asking for the strength to carry it. When pain turns to power, there's a moment in every journey when pain changes its meaning. At first, it feels like opposition. Then, with awareness, it becomes feedback, and eventually, it becomes fuel. You start to recognize the pattern. Every breakthrough is preceded by struggle. Every expansion begins as friction, and that friction, once feared, becomes sacred. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" That question is the hinge between suffering and strength, transitioning from pain to failure. Pain teaches you about endurance. Failure teaches you about refinement. Together, they form the curriculum of mastery. Pain is the forge. Failure is the feedback. One burns away weakness. The other points toward precision. Let's look at failure not as a wall, but as a mirror. Failure has been given a bad name. It's treated like the opposite of success, when in truth, it's the foundation of it. No one arrives at mastery without leaving a trail of mistakes behind them. You learn more from one honest failure than from 100 easy victories, because failure is not a wall, it's a mirror. It doesn't block your path. It reflects your habits, your assumptions, your level of commitment. And when you're willing to look into that mirror without flinching, you gain the most powerful insight of all: self-awareness. In a mountain village lived a young archer who wanted to become the best in the land. Every day he practiced, but no matter how hard he tried, his arrows often missed the mark. Frustrated, he went to an old master. The master watched him shoot. The arrow sailed wide. The boy cursed under his breath. The master said, "Do not apologize to the target. Listen to it." He led the boy closer. "Every miss tells you where you're misaligned. If your arrow drifts left, your stance is too rigid. If it falls short, your breath was shallow. If it wavers, your mind was somewhere else." The boy trained for months, learning to read the language of failure. Each missed shot became data, each mistake, instruction. Eventually, he hit the center, not because he avoided failure, but because he studied it. The master smiled and said, "You have finally learned to see the mirror behind the target. Failure isn't an endpoint, it's a coordinate. It shows you where you are in relation to where you want to be. Without that information, you wander blind. Every time you fail, life is simply saying, adjust your aim." But most people never hear the message because they're too busy judging themselves for missing the mark. Shame drowns out the signal. Masters learn faster because they drop the shame and keep the data. They analyze, adapt, and act again. That's how evolution happens, through iterative refinement. Thomas Edison was once asked how it felt to fail 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb. He smiled and said, "I didn't fail 1,000 times. The light bulb was an invention with 1,000 steps. That's the mindset of mastery, reframing failure from a verdict into a process. Each misstep becomes a stepping stone, each wrong turn a refinement. You stop measuring your worth by outcomes and start measuring it by engagement. Because success isn't about being right, it's about staying in relationship with what's real, the student and the broken pot. A student of pottery once grew frustrated after her 10th cracked vase. She threw the pieces away and said, "I'll never be good at this." Her teacher quietly gathered the shards and placed them back on the wheel. He added water and said, "You see, the clay hasn't failed. It's just returning to form." He looked at her and said, "You are clay too." Failure doesn't define you, it refines you. It softens the ego, deepens the patience, sharpens the eye. When you stop resisting failure, you realize it's not breaking you down, it's breaking you open. The difference between quitting and learning: failure becomes fatal only when you stop learning, when you take it personally instead of practically. The disciplined mind doesn't say, "I failed." It says, "This result didn't match my intent. What must I adjust?" The one who stops there quits. The one who studies keeps evolving. That's why masters are those who have failed the most, not because they're reckless, but because they stayed in the game long enough to accumulate feedback others ran from. A pianist once said, "When I play a wrong note, I don't panic. I listen, because a wrong note is just an invitation to find the next right one." Sometimes the most beautiful improvisations in music come from mistakes embraced rather than erased. Life works the same way. The melody of mastery is not perfection, it's responsiveness. You don't need to play every note right. You just need to stay present enough to keep playing. Failure and the ego. The ego hates failure because it loves control. It sees every mistake as a threat to identity. But the spirit loves failure because it knows that cracks are how the light gets in. Failure humbles you in the best way. It reminds you that mastery isn't owned, it's maintained. It keeps you flexible, curious, and human. Without failure, the ego grows arrogant. Without humility, growth dies. That's why the masters of every tradition, martial, artistic, spiritual, bow before their failures with gratitude. They understand that humility is the gatekeeper of higher wisdom. Every failure offers a mirror moment, a chance to look at who you were being when you missed the mark, not to judge, but to observe. Were you distracted? Were you forcing instead of flowing? Were you attached to the outcome instead of aligned with the process? That moment of honest reflection is where transformation happens. If you can meet your reflection without flinching, you can change anything. But if you avoid the mirror, you repeat the same mistakes until life forces you to look. Pain and failure. Together, pain builds strength, failure builds wisdom. Pain tests your endurance, failure tests your awareness. Together, they complete the education of the warrior. Pain says, "Stay in the fire." Failure says, "Aim again." You need both. Without pain, you never develop resilience. Without failure, you never develop refinement. That's why every path of mastery, from martial arts to music to meditation, demands a relationship with both. You learn to bow to the burn and study the miss. A sculptor spent 3 years carving a statue from a massive block of marble. Every day he chipped away, sometimes too much, sometimes not enough. At last, he unveiled it to the public. A young man looked at it and said, "It's perfect. How did you make it so flawless?" The sculptor smiled. "By making 1,000 tiny mistakes." He ran his hand along the smooth stone and said, "Each error taught me something the right stroke never could." The fear of failure. Most people fear failure because they think it defines them. But what defines you is not how many times you fall, it's how many times you return wiser. The one who fails 10 times learns 10 ways that don't work. The one who never tries learns nothing. Fear of failure is really fear of being seen learning. It's pride pretending to be caution, and it's the greatest thief of potential there is. If you want to live fully, you must be willing to look foolish in the service of something meaningful. You must let go of reputation and reach for revelation. The Phoenix Principle. Every failure carries the seed of rebirth. Like the phoenix, you rise not in spite of the ashes, but from them. That's why resilient people are often radiant. They've been burned, but they've also been reborn. You don't transcend pain and failure by avoiding them. You transcend them by walking straight through and discovering that you're made of something fireproof. That realization changes everything. Pain refines, failure instructs. Together, they create the unshakable foundation of mastery, the path of the warrior, the athlete, the artist. It's not about perfection. It's about transformation through friction, about learning to meet pressure with presence and resistance with awareness. In the next section, we'll explore how consistency, the steady application of these lessons, transforms effort into identity, how repetition, rhythm, and resolve build not just performance, but presence. But before we move on, remember this truth: pain is the forge, failure is the mirror. Both are sacred, both are necessary, and both, when embraced, turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. There's a quiet strength that doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't roar or rush, it simply moves, steady, deliberate, faithful. That strength is born through one thing: consistency, not talent, not luck, not even motivation, just the quiet daily act of showing up again and again, long after the excitement fades and the results still seem invisible. Because consistency transforms effort into identity. It's not what you do once that defines you. It's what you do repeatedly, especially when no one's watching. The mountain that built itself. Imagine a mountain rising from the earth. It wasn't formed in a day. It wasn't a single cataclysmic event that gave it height. It was built grain by grain, layer by layer, over centuries. Each layer of earth pressed against the next until the weight of time itself gave it shape. That's what consistency does. Every repetition, every act of discipline, every time you keep your word adds another layer to your internal mountain. It's not dramatic, it's geological. Confidence doesn't come from what you intend to do. It comes from what you prove to yourself you can do through repetition. Each completed action whispers, "I can trust me." And that self-trust becomes the bedrock of unshakable confidence. Confidence is earned, not inherited. You don't wake up confident, you build it brick by brick. Confidence isn't about arrogance or ego, it's about evidence. The evidence that you can rely on yourself when things get hard. That's why some of the most confident people you'll ever meet are quiet. They don't need to announce it. They've lived it. They've spent years keeping promises no one else saw. They've done the reps, walked the miles, practiced the moves, written the pages, not once, but thousands of times. And that history of consistency becomes their internal armor. When pressure comes, they don't crumble and they remember. They remember every small moment they showed up when they could have walked away. That's what confidence really is: memory under pressure. A potter once told his student, "I don't make masterpieces, I make practice." For 40 years, he shaped clay every morning before dawn. Some pieces cracked, some were perfect, but he never missed a day. When asked his secret, he said, "The wheel taught me. Every morning it turns, whether I'm inspired or not. Every rotation reminds me, rhythm over results." Consistency doesn't just shape your work, it shapes you. It gives you rhythm, which becomes resilience. And resilience, over time, becomes radiance, that unspoken presence that only a lifetime of practice can give, the science of confidence. Even the body knows this truth. When you train a muscle through repetition, you rewire the nervous system. You create neural grooves, memory pathways that make movement more efficient and natural. What once took effort becomes instinct. Confidence is the same. It's not a belief. It's a memory of success repeated so many times that the body remembers before the mind doubts. Every repetition becomes a vote for who you're becoming. Every consistent act reprograms the subconscious. I am someone who follows through. There's a story of a monk who was asked how he became so calm and unshakable. He said, "Every night for 50 years, I've lit a lantern before bed and extinguished it before dawn." The man who asked him said, "That can't be it." The monk smiled. "You're right, it's not the lantern. It's what lighting it taught me. It taught me to return to the same place, the same act, the same moment, no matter how I felt. And through that, I learned that discipline is not the cage of repetition, it's the rhythm of remembrance. That's the paradox. Discipline doesn't limit you, it liberates you, because every ritual done with awareness becomes an anchor in the storms of emotion. Consistency is spiritual. In the Taoist view, the path is not found in dramatic awakenings, it's found in daily alignment. The sage doesn't chase moments of glory, he builds them moment by moment, breath by breath. True power is built quietly, in the invisible hours of practice, in the unseen repetitions, in the devotion to simple things done well. When your actions align with your values day after day, peace replaces doubt, confidence replaces chaos, purpose replaces paralysis. That's what spiritual consistency looks like, not perfection, but presence. A climber once told his apprentice, "Don't stare at the summit for too long. It will only make you tired." "Then what should I do?" the apprentice asked. "Love the next step." That's consistency. Falling in love with the process instead of worshiping the outcome, because it's the daily climb that builds the legs to reach the peak. And once you've taken enough steps, the summit doesn't intimidate you anymore. It recognizes you. The mountain doesn't yield to those who dream about it. It yields to those who show up and climb every day, rain or shine. There is a subtle confidence of masters. There's a quietness in those who've done the work for decades. You can see it in their posture, their gaze, their breath. They don't need to rush because they trust time. They don't need to boast because they trust themselves. Their confidence isn't loud, it's grounded, it's not inflated, and it's integrated. And that kind of confidence can only come from one source: consistency through difficulty. They've fallen, they've failed, they've felt pain, but they've also returned again and again. And every return was another layer of strength. Confidence built through consistency is like sediment. It settles slowly, invisibly, but permanently. Every day of discipline adds weight to your foundation. Every act of follow through compresses integrity into identity. You might not notice the growth in a day, but in a year, in a decade, you look back and see that you've become something unshakable. Like a mountain, you've risen slowly, but nothing can move you now, because every layer of effort has fused into who you are. You don't do discipline anymore. You are discipline. You don't practice confidence. You embody it. Consistency transforms effort into essence. At first, consistency feels like a grind. You force yourself out of bed, force yourself to practice, force yourself to push. But over time, something shifts. It stops being effort and starts being expression. The habit becomes harmony. The discipline becomes devotion. And what was once a chore becomes a form of art, the art of showing up. This is how true confidence is born, not from believing you can do it, but from knowing you've already done it countless times. When you reach this level of steadiness, when pain, failure, and repetition have all done their work, something sacred emerges. A realization so simple it almost feels overlooked. You are free. Free not because life is easy, but because you're no longer afraid of difficulty. Free not because pain is gone, but because it no longer owns you. Free because discipline has replaced doubt. That's the final stage of mastery, freedom through consistency. If the first half of this talk was about awakening discipline, and the middle about walking through pain and failure, then this final part is about remembering why it all matters. Discipline, consistency, discomfort, they're not punishments, they're portals. They're how you build a life that feels both peaceful and powerful. Because when you truly understand the rhythm of growth, you see that every struggle carries a sacred message. Pain refines, discipline frees, comfort destroys, pain refines. Pain is the sculptor's chisel. It removes what no longer serves you: the self doubt, the weakness, the excess comfort. Every challenge you face is an opportunity to let go of something that's keeping you small. You don't run from pain anymore. You invite it to teach you. You breathe into it, listen to it, and let it reveal what's ready to evolve. Pain is not punishment, it's purification. Discipline frees. Most people think freedom is doing whatever they want. But real freedom is the ability to do what's needed, even when you don't feel like it. Discipline gives you that freedom. It liberates you from the chaos of mood and the trap of procrastination. It transforms "I have to" into "I get to." When you live with discipline, your actions align with your values. You move with integrity instead of impulse. And that alignment and that coherence between word and deed creates peace. Freedom without discipline is drift. Discipline without freedom is rigidity. The fusion of both is mastery. Comfort destroys. Comfort feels kind. It feels deserved. It feels safe. But over time, it corrodes vitality. It seduces the warrior into retirement before the battle is over. That's why the disciplined person keeps choosing small discomforts on purpose. They stay near the edge. They know that the edge is where life sharpens them. Do something uncomfortable every day. Here's your call to action, your daily ritual for building real power. Do something uncomfortable on purpose every day. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It can be a cold shower, an honest conversation, a longer training session, a harder truth. But whatever it is, it should stretch you, just enough to wake you up. Because each intentional act of discomfort reaffirms your strength. Each one rewires your nervous system to equate challenge with growth rather than threat. Soon, discomfort stops feeling like pain. It feels like progress. The climber who stopped climbing. There's a legend about a climber who once scaled the highest peaks, but as he grew older, he became comfortable telling stories about his past. He stopped climbing. One day, a young boy asked, "Why don't you climb anymore?" The man replied, "Because I've already reached the top." The boy said softly, "Then what's left to climb?" The man thought for a moment and realized himself. That night, he packed his gear again. The climb never ends because the summit is never external. The mountain is within you, and it keeps growing as long as you do. Every time you choose challenge over comfort, you recommit to the process of becoming. You re-enter the sacred rhythm of life. Stress, adapt, strengthen, evolve. It's the same rhythm found in nature. The waves shaping the shore, the wind shaping the trees, the fire shaping the steel, and you're part of that same pattern. You're meant to be shaped. When you stop resisting it, life stops punishing you and starts partnering with you. The quiet confidence of the discipline. Eventually, the daily discomforts don't feel like struggle. They feel like alignment. You begin to enjoy the resistance. You recognize it as proof that you're alive and growing. That's when you've reached the highest form of confidence. Quiet, unshakable, humble. The kind that doesn't need validation because it's built from evidence. The kind that looks at obstacles and says, "I've trained for this." That's the moment where you realize pain and struggle didn't weaken you. They were building you. So here's the practice I invite you to begin today. Each morning, ask yourself one question. What's one thing I can do today that will make me stronger tomorrow? Then do it. Not because it's easy, not because you're inspired, but because it's necessary. One act of courage, one disciplined choice, one moment of leaning into discomfort. That's how you rewire the soul. That's how you build a life worthy of the warrior within you, the yielding warrior's creed. When life tests me, I will not retreat. When pain visits, I will listen. When comfort calls, I will rise. When fear whispers, I will move. Because I know now what others forget. Pain refines, discipline frees, comfort destroys. You've walked through the fire. You've seen that struggle isn't the end. It's the invitation. Now the path forward is simple. Keep walking, keep refining, keep rising. Because consistency is your foundation, discipline is your freedom, and discomfort is your compass. If you do something uncomfortable every day, you'll never drift into decay. You'll stay sharp, alive, awake. And one day, you'll look back at the mountain you've built from your own repetitions, layer by layer, act by act, and realize that what you were building wasn't a career, a reputation, or a skill. It was you.